For over 20 years, the Fire Store has equipped first responders with the best in firefighting gear. Discover seasonal savings on the gear you trust and visit thefirestore.com to shop everything but the truck.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Backstep. This is Ronnie K. up in New York, and the leaves are changing, and the times are changing, and all of that stuff. Tommy, I guess if you're watching the national news, you know what I'm talking about. Tommy, what's going on in your neck of the woods in New Mexico?
Winter is finally starting to tickle its way in. Unfortunately, I had to go and look at a fatal fire this morning, but it was, I think, about 32 when I got on scene, and I am not mentally prepared for winter, but it's coming whether I like it or not.
Yeah, we know. We actually we got rain tonight and tomorrow, and then it's going to dip down into the high 20s by tomorrow night. So yeah, it's knocking on the door here as well in the Northeast. So it is what it was. What can I tell you, man?
I was supposed to make a appearance in Emmitsburg next week. And unfortunately, due to the government shutdown, I will not be in the great state of Maryland.
Well, I as we start the chat, I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't bring that good-looking guy with the gray hair in the middle of the screen. You're in the middle of my screen. I don't know where you're sitting, but you look like you're in the center to me. You're the center square. You're the center square on Hollywood Squares here today. But for the edification of those of you who don't know, and if you don't know the guy with the gray hair, you're living under a rock with the Geico man, that's for sure. But Denis Onieal's been around the fire service over 50 years. He spent 25 years with the Jersey City Fire Department, making his way to the chief of department. And then he went to the federal government for 25 years, 20 years the National Fire Academy superintendent, and 5 as the deputy fire administrator. Denis holds a PhD in education. And an all-around pretty good guy. He's from Jersey. How bad can he be? We got a little Jersey connection here tonight, you know. So, Denis, welcome to the Backstep, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ron. It's good to see 2 New Jersey Americans. Most people don't know Tommy is also from New Jersey, and Ron, you made your bones in New Jersey when you came across the sea from Brooklyn. So,
Yes.
Well, the rest of the audience is probably going to have a tough time understanding our
I didn't bring an interpreter.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because when I got on the Mayflower in Brooklyn, we went past this island. Somebody said that there was a guy, my grandfather was on the boat, and he said, "Is Staten Island?" And I said, "Yeah, it's Staten Island, Grandpa." You know, and we just kept going, and we hit the Jersey Shore, and the rest is history, like they say. So what could I tell you? But welcome to the Backstep, Denny, and we're going to get into the meat of the show in a couple of minutes. We'll cover a couple of things in the meantime. I had the honor recently on October 18th, the National Fallen Firefighters, along with and in partnership with the FDNY, we held a memorial in Staten Island at the College of Staten Island using their gym to honor 176 firefighters who have died from World Trade Center illnesses over the last 22 years. While I thought I was done with the fallen firefighters in the 2024 after the Memorial Weekend, 4 weeks later, just like in The Godfather Part 3, they dragged me back in. So I got the call from Gary about a month after the May ceremonies, and he said, "Ron," he said, "we're bringing the whole thing to New York next year. We need you." So with that, I teamed up with Tommy Richardson, the former chief of department in New York City, and Tommy and I went to work fast. And then eventually we pulled in the Emmitsburg team, but we couldn't really pull them in tight and furious because they had the national to put on in May of 2025. So Tommy and I did a bunch of stuff, and then right after the national in May of 25, we pulled in the Emmitsburg team, and thank God for them. In fact, I nicknamed them Kanterman's Cavalry. Tommy and I were waiting for them. They came into New York for a meeting in December, and we were in a diner near the college, and I told them to meet us there for breakfast. And they came walking in, and it was almost like slow motion, like in that movie with the astronauts when they were kind of walking slow, you know. And I said to Tommy Richardson, I said, "Here comes Kanterman's Cavalry. They're riding into town to rescue the day." And I nicknamed them that, and the whole rest of the time I called them that. And, of course, me being me, I had to make up a shirt. It said Kanterman's Cavalry right on it over the Maltese Cross. And and they came and they did what they do best, man. That those bunch of guys, Lou Rader and Larry Curl, and the guys that are there every year. Matt Tobia, Matt was also a superstar this year. It was very difficult trying to get 176 company escorts from the firehouses in New York City to come out. So Matt did some cajoling, and then we picked up a deputy chief in operations, Jimmy Aaron's great guy. And Jimmy went banging on firehouse doors saying, "You got to give us a guy for this." Everybody showed. Everybody did a great job. The remarks were great. Sal Casano, our former commissioner and chief of department, did a phenomenal keynote. And it went like a clock. So I took the week off after to catch up on my sleep. I hadn't slept in a year over this thing. So I took the following week off to catch up with myself, reintroduced myself to Fran. We knew we were married, but we hadn't seen each other in a while, and got some sleep and all of that good stuff. But it went very well. The families really got what they came for, and it worked out extremely well. So I was super proud of the team, and we got something to really be proud of by putting that memorial on. Other than that, we did have a line of duty today in this as of yesterday. We had a 42-year-old firefighter from Ladder 120 in Brooklyn had a heart attack on the roof of a building while he was operating, and so we have a line of duty funeral coming up this week. I guess we're waiting to hear the particulars and all of that. In the midst of 2 5-alarm fires, one in the Bronx, one in Manhattan, and everybody, thank goodness, walked away from that in one piece. And this fire did its thing and took this guy. So we will give him proper honors as we always do. Unfortunately, the fire service is real good at that, right? We became good at it for no particular reason other than we just do it too many times. So with that, we asked Dr. Onieal to join us. Chief, it was funny when Denis, when you went to the National Fire Academy, nobody knew what the hell to call you. 50% was like, "Hey, Chief, how are you? Hey, Doc, how are you?" I used to call him Chief Doctor, Dr. Chief. We used to screw it all up on him, But under all of that, let me tell you something. And I usually save this kind of stuff for the end. But Denis has had hundreds of titles, but my favorite one is friend. That's my favorite one of all, Denis. You've always been a good friend, not just to me personally, but everyone you've met and to the fire service. So the title of friend for me, that's the big one. That's the big one. So we appreciate you, man. So tonight we want to talk about mentorship, something that's been bouncing around the fire service for probably the last 25 years, maybe in earnest, about mentoring young people. That old thing we eat our young. We get the young kids in the firehouse, and then we eat them three times a day, and then we spit them out, and we eat them again and beat them up and all that stuff. And number one, it's a different time today. You can have a little bit of fun with the new kids, but as you know, a couple of firehouses in New York recently took their Proby stuff too far, and those guys are going to pay for it. And it's just it's a different time. It's 2025. It's not 1925. So mentorship is something that we've looked at. I've met a couple of people along the way that have started mentorship programs, formal mentorship programs, particularly for probationary firefighters or rookies coming into the department. And that guy who coordinated that, also a Jersey guy who we all know, and he had training for a while in his career department. And he reached out to senior firefighters and said, "Hey, listen, you're going to get a kid from the academy. I would like for you to mentor him." So there was kind of more of a formal mentorship program. But Denis, let me turn it over to you for something. I'd like for you to kind of reflect on the importance of this mentoring thing, and what it really means.
Ron, at least in my career, I don't know anyone who's been a success in anything, especially in the fire service, unless they had more than one mentor, actually. It's the way of negotiating a path to success. Now, I've had quite a few mentors in my career. Beginning I was on a ladder company, and I had a senior man who was just terrific with us and kind of broke us in. And there was another fellow that I came on the job with, and we were both assigned to the same ladder company. It was the busiest ladder in the city. And it was there was never this, hazing or ritual kinds of things that they did. That was pretty serious work. And as I began to, go to school, and I had professors who were mentors, Jim Klein, was at the time a firefighter, then a lieutenant, and then a captain, retired from FDNY. You know him, both of you know Jim. Battalion Chief George Milne, the chief of the department later on, John Mullins. There was a New York City Fire Chief of Department, Edward McAniff, that I ran across in a different time and place, but we worked with him on entry testing for New York City firefighters. We were prepping people to take the tests. As a matter of fact, Sal Casano worked with us as well. And, one of my jobs was to pick up Ed. He couldn't drive at night. And so I would pick him up and take him to these sites where we were doing the training. And I would ask him these general questions. And it was a college degree in the front seat of my car. And then, I went into federal service. I had mentors that kind of showed me the way, what to watch out for, dealing with the political processes, dealing with the administrative processes. So mentoring, if you're going to be a success, and most successful people will tell you this, you need mentors, and you need several different kinds of mentors throughout your life. And I think if you two reflect on your careers, you two both had mentors through your careers as well.
There's no, I was lucky. I picked up my lifelong mentor. When I say lifelong, Jimmy Murtaugh is a retired deputy assistant chief out of New York City. He taught at John Jay College for 30 years. I was a freshman in college. I was 17 years old. It was 1974. And I met Jimmy when I was in Fire Science 101, and he was a young lieutenant working on the West Side, teaching at night. And we just hit it off. And then he was my go-to guy for a lot of stuff coming into the service. I was a kid then, but coming in. And then once I got in and then making certain moves, as you know, I moved around a little bit. I didn't stay in one place. And he was my call. When I met Fran, I was ready to give her a ring. I called Jimmy first. Jimmy, should I give this girl a ring? So, I mean, I really went to him for so many large decisions, and then, of course, in between, you have those discussions about whether it's firematics, whether it's strategy and tactics, whatever it is. So sometimes you just need to talk to somebody, on some social level. But the guy was always there, and we're still friends. Now, this is 51 years. I know Jim. Mm-hmm. Okay, he's in Florida. I think he's 85 now, and we still talk on the phone. And he had just finished doing that quintessential high-rise book with Jerry Tracy and Jack Murphy. He was the third party on that book, and so he's still in it, and talk to him now and then, and I telling him what's going on now in the job, and he'd say, oh, you know what, that happened in 91 and it happened in 85, and here's what we did and all that. So he, this is a lifelong, not just a mentorship, but it turned into a lifelong friendship. I've been friends with this guy for 51 years, and it's been phenomenal. And anything that has happened to me that it's been pretty good, and I've had a couple of pretty nice things happen to me, I kind of bang back the credit to he's one of the guys that gets the credit. A couple of the books I've published, it's right in there. Jimmy Murtaugh, my lifelong mentor. So when it blossoms into that, to a lifelong friendship, and I'll tell you a story later on, something he did to me when I was a chief somewhere. But it's good. And what, just talking about the importance of it, I couldn't agree with you more, Dennis. It's just that I consider myself lucky because I've asked so many guys over all these years that I've been teaching and running around in FDIC, let's talk about mentors, because I do a leadership class. So that's part of it. How many of you have one? 3 hands go up in a room of 50. How many of you are one? 2 hands go up in a room of 50. So it's something that we really have. I don't think we've mastered this yet in the fire service.
No,
I think
and I think back to a mentor that I call a mentor that he never knew he was one, and I didn't know what to call him. And it was Louis Sheets. So I know, Dennis, you remember Louis. He was a career lieutenant in South Orange, New Jersey, but also a volunteer deputy chief up in Chatham. And Louis was pretty established when I was coming up with the guys in Jersey. And he was somebody I wanted to emulate. A career firefighter, still had a volunteer background. And Louis was probably one of the first real water carriers for firefighter safety that I had met. And unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to let Louis know how important he was to me. He died in the line of duty in the early 90s. But still to this day, I think back some of the lessons that he's left and others that I probably should have warned them that, hey, you're doing some good stuff and I want to be like you. But we never had the opportunity to have some of those conversations. Alan Brunacini, one, is a big example. I spent some time with conversations with Chief Brunacini, but otherwise it was just looking at the example he left and something for us to follow.
Yeah, Dennis, you mentioned before about that along your career path that you've had different mentors in different I don't know, areas, arenas, whatever you want to call it. So can you give us some examples of what you're talking about? Somebody
Sure.
mentored you in this and that and whatever.
I gave this a little thought, and just so that everybody knows, we kind of worked out a few questions so that it would give some direction. But I always found that there's really two kinds of mentors. There's what I call the navigator, and then there's the mentor. And the navigator is the person that you call, that you call up and say, hey, I got this issue. What do you think? Or in my, several different cases, somebody will call me up. Give you one example. A friend of mine called me up, and his son was trying to get into a fire science degree program, and he didn't have the marks. He was transferring from another college, and I made a phone call, and the kid got in. And another time, a parent called me up that I knew the family, and they wanted to get into the fire service. And I sat down with the young man and said, told him the kind of things that if he wanted to, get into a major fire department, these are the kinds of things that they're looking for today. So you get your EMS ticket or you get your paramedic ticket, and you're gonna waltz in. So the navigators are the one-time kinds of things. The mentors are the longer-term kinds of things. The people that you both talked about, the Alan Brunacinis and in my case, another one was Vinnie Dunn, but Murtaugh. I mean, these are people that you're in not a relationship. I want to characterize it as a kind of a friendship, a back and forth kind of thing. And and then if I was going to take a mentor's, I've mentored a lot of people, and I kind of put them into three different categories. The pre-service people, you're trying to mentor them into the positions. Mid-service people or in-service people who are navigating a career. How do I get promoted? How do I take a promotional exam? What do you think about, transferring from, I don't know, an engine to a ladder, but that's pretty simple. But, and then what I'm doing today, believe it or not, is a lot of post-service mentoring where people call me up and I'm one of them. I call them, I'm flunking retirement. I just need to, continue to contribute. And what most men and women in the fire service don't realize is how valuable their experience is. And if you want to do payback in terms of charitable work, if you want to serve on boards, if you want to do community work, and then there's a lot of organizations that are looking for men and women like us that to show up for work every time, that know how to have good interpersonal skills, that know how to follow rules, that know how to do research. And those opportunities are all over the place. I kid around, your spouse married you for better, for worse, and for richer, for poorer, but not for lunch every day. And
That's great.
so if I was to break mentoring into the one-time short-term navigator, and then the long-term mentor, and then pre-service, in-service, and then post-service, the kind of mentoring, and they are different people. They have different skills. But I think the most rewarding thing, and it's only happened to me once or twice, was there would be people that you mentor, and then they turn around and they become your mentor. They are, doing different things. And I have a couple of stories on that as well.
Yeah, I understand everything you just said, and certainly, yeah, we definitely suck at retirement. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to give it a try next year. I'll see what happens, but we'll go into that. Interestingly enough, we talk about this the real mentor. That's the lifelong commitment. So I'm the chief up at Mohegan in Connecticut at the time, and Jimmy Murtaugh's coming through with his wife. One of his kids lives in Connecticut. He called me up. He says, "Hey, we're coming to see the kids." He said, "I want to come and see you." I said, "Phenomenal." I said, "You know what?" I said, "Come a night early." I said, "I'll put you up in the presidential suite." I said, "And we'll have dinner together with the wives and all of that stuff, and I'll show you my operation. I'll show them around the firehouse and all the other stuff." Okay, great. So sure enough, it goes on. So we're sitting there, and he's now that the girls are walking around, they're in the mall, and they're shopping and screeching hangers and all that stuff, and I bring them to the firehouse and I show them around, and then we're having a chat, and I said to him, I said, "I'm working on a document now." I said, it's when I get a new person in the firehouse, what you need to know the first 4 weeks, the first 2 weeks, the first 4 weeks, what you need to know the first month, what you need to know the first 6 months, and it's like a handbook, to give to that new person, that new man or woman who comes in, and he said to me, "I did something like that when I was a battalion chief in Upper Manhattan." He says, "If you came to the battalion and you were a probie, you were brand new," he says, "when I met you," so I had them in the car, I would give them this little thing that I made up called, "Here's what you need to know the first 2 weeks." Like, learn your apparatus inside and out, learn the members of your company. Then in 4 weeks, you need to know who the surrounding companies are, the surrounding houses and the officers. And then in 2 months, who the battalion chiefs are, and on and on and on. Then he said at the end, I put down, these are the things you should know. And then he did something called what I think you should know. And then he would say, like, take an EMT class, take a fire science course, go to college, read these 10 books, whatever. So I was doing the same thing unbeknownst. So I said to him, "Jimmy, I would love to send you this thing when I'm done." I said, "in a draft form, and I'd love for you to comment on it." Okay. So I emailed it to him. 4 weeks later, I get an envelope back in the mail with my term paper. I pull it out. There's red writing all over the damn thing. It was great. I mean, he took a red pen, add this, add that. It was just like he marked my term paper 40 years ago. It was unbelievable. I had a good laugh at first, and then I had that moment saying, this guy still really cares.
Yeah.
He wants this document to be really good, like I do. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, Professor, how you doing?" He said, "Hey, how are you?" I said, I got my term paper back. You did everything but give me a mark." He said, "Oh, no, you got an A. Don't worry about that." So, and then sure enough, and I did it. I used it. And then when I went to my next command in Connecticut, I kind of did the same thing, but I already had my template. He had already looked at it. But while it was kind of funny up front, those are the things I treasure. That I still remember it like it happened yesterday. I mean, I treasure that stuff. And just the discussions we've had. That's really, to me, that's the gold. That's the goal. You have those discussions, no matter what they were talking about. And he came to see me when I went to my next command in Wilton. Him and Jack Murphy came to see me. We went out for lunch. I showed him my operation, and we talked, and we just got into these conversations. And the thing about Jack triggers. There was a bunch of Murtaugh disciples at John Jay College. Okay, it was myself and you hear the lineup, you know who they are: Jack Murphy, Glenn Corbett, Mike Champo, Charlie Jennings. Who else was in there? John Grasso, a couple of more guys, and so Jim lived in Rockland County, New York, right across the Tappan Zee Bridge from where I am now. And when I moved up here, me, him, and Jack would get together about 5 or 6 times a year for breakfast near his house out of courtesy in Rockland County. We found a nice diner. And I'll just tell you the first one, because all the rest of them went the same way. We start talking, just me, him, and Jack. It's a Sunday morning. It's 9:00. We order coffee, waiting for breakfast to be cooked. And we start talking about stuff. And now Jimmy starts to speak. And the first time that we met, and it happened, it was instant. Like we're sitting there and he's talking about something that, like, I looked at Jack and he looked at me and I went like this. I opened my eyes and Jack did the same. And we both at the same time flipped over our paper placemats, took out a pen, and started taking notes in the diner. We started taking notes, and we started laughing. And Jimmy didn't even realize what was going on. I said, Jimmy, we're taking notes, man. Keep talking. It's okay. We got, and we wrote shit down. And this is only this is 10 years ago. I'm 40 years into the service and I'm sitting with this guy and I'm making notes because what he's saying, he's giving me pearls, and I don't know if you guys had the opportunity to have that with some of your mentors as well.
When
the guy that you just sit down.
When we first started talking about doing this on the podcast, I of course have to research. Imagine that. But I started looking at some of the long-term benefits and made a couple notes that didn't really kind of set in until I actually looked at it. But from the standpoint of enhanced performance, mentoring is going to do a lot for that. Stronger team cohesion, improve retention, which especially in the volunteer fire service these days, retention is still a pretty hot topic. Safety culture enforcement. And a lot of us say, well, yeah, we live the safety culture, but maybe not so much. But I think with the mentor, that can certainly come to fruition. And succession planning is another one that mentoring can reach out and touch to make sure that as openings come up in the department, that you have mentored somebody along that's now ready to step into those leadership roles.
Dennis, let me ask you a question. Based on what Tommy just said, did you feel once you got your sea legs and once you knew who you were and what you were going to be, and you're working your way up the ranks and all that stuff, and you've been mentored to that point by one or more people, did that thing click in your head like, I'm going to have to give this back someday, like I got to pay this back? Did that hit you?
It did, and it formed a formal process. Now, I mean, I'm not talking about the navigation stuff where somebody's trying to get into grad school or they're looking for a job and you make a phone call, that kind of stuff that happened all the time. But there were people who I spent considerable amount of time helping them progress. And they are in today top jobs in the fire service. If I mentioned their name or their rank, you would know them right away, but I'm just going to leave it. So there's a scene in the movie The Godfather, in the first movie Godfather, where they're at the wedding and people are coming in to see The Godfather and they're asking The Godfather for favors. And one of the people that comes in to see him is an undertaker, a funeral director. And his daughter was assaulted and he wants The Godfather to the guy got off. He didn't get convicted and The Godfather wants him to get punished. The undertaker wants The Godfather to do this guy in. So in the discussion, when it's all over, The Godfather said, why didn't you come to me? If you came to me, he would have suffered that day. And the undertaker says, well, I didn't want to bother you. And he said, you can always bother me, blah, blah, blah. And so the undertaker says to The Godfather, what do I owe you? And The Godfather said, you are dissing me. I don't take money or gifts or anything like that. He said, but one day I will call you. And okay. So whenever I worked with people, I often said to them, look, they'd say thank you. I said, look, one day I'm going to call you and I'm going to ask you to help somebody else. Right. And there's probably 15 or 20 people out there today who are worried that I'm going to call them for something. But in truth, I have done that, and have called them up and said, "Look, so and so over here needs your help. You've got a particular talent that I can't help them with, or I'm not good at, or but so um, that's how I've paid that back. That have put those people into mentoring positions.
You know what? Another thing that happened to me, and it might have happened to you guys as well. When I lived in New Jersey, I lived in North Plainfield in Somerset County, and it's when I was the chief at Merck, and I became a volunteer firefighter in the town. We had a combination department. We had the only paid guys in Somerset County, New Jersey, since 1904, and the rest of us, we'd show up at the scene, get dressed at the scene, and go over to the incident command and say, "What do you need?" And I put a team of 3 guys together, go do this or whatever. So I got friendly with the career chief there through the Career Chiefs Association, and then the guys on the floor, with the local, and had a really nice, great 11 years. I met some really great guys there, and there was a young kid. He was started as a volunteer, became a career guy, and I guess 8 or 9 years into my stay, he comes to, "Hey, I'm getting married." And I said, "Oh, great!" And at one point, while he was in college, I got him a summer internship at Merck, and he spent the summer with the fire department at Merck. And we just taught him fire protection systems and inspections and all the stuff. And then he'd respond with us to calls, and it was a nice little thing for him. And he got Merck used to pay all the college students. So he got paid for the summer and all that. So gets on the career department, and then he says to me, "I'm getting married." "Oh, good for you, Jimmy. Meet a nice girl." He says, "Yeah." He said, "She's a doctor and she's coming out of medical school." I says, "Oh man," I says, "you're going to have it made and all that stuff. Congratulations." And that was it, And a month later, I get an invitation in the mail to this kid's wedding. Now, I didn't think that I knew him to be invited to his wedding. Firehouse associate, you have firehouse friends, you have close friends, you have medium friends, you have people who think they're your friend, all that stuff. So, but he was like a firehouse guy, and he was much younger than me. We get the invitation. I show it to Fran, and she says, "We going?" I says, I guess so, So I saw him at the firehouse, not far after that. And I called him to the side, and I said, "I got your wedding invitation, but I'm a little baffled why I'm invited, because we just kind of know each other from the." He goes, "You're my mentor." And I said, "I am?" It's like, and then he said to me, "You're the guy I go to all the time to ask everything." He says, "I don't go to anybody in the firehouse here." He felt comfortable talking to me and asking me questions. So the point of the story, we went to the wedding, by the way, and he had a beautiful daughter, and all these years later, he's divorced. But that's another story, okay? And he divorced, and he just retired. And he's much younger than me, but he's already retired. So what can I tell you? But I think that the crux of the story is sometimes you're mentoring somebody and you don't know it. And it happened again. It turns out in North Plainfield again. When I went up to Connecticut, they brought me in to do a leadership class. So I said to the chief, I said to Billy, "Just the officers?" He said, No, do the whole fire department. He said, "We'll bring you in for a whole day, do your regular class that you do in New Jersey, for the state and all that." I said, "Okay." So in the first row, which is normally reserved for the new guys and the probies, because the old guys sit in the back and bullshit the whole time. The whole front row was in and they go in badge number order. Badge 1 is the senior guy, badge 2, badge 3 on the firefighters, and like 1 to 8 is sitting in the front row, and then everybody else. And I'm doing my thing, and we get to mentorship. I've been talking about this a long time, and I said to one of the probies, I said, "You got a mentor in this department?" He said, "Yeah, badge number 2. And I said, "What about the guy next to you?" He says, "Oh, yeah, badge number 1. And those guys flipped around so fast in their chairs, their heads almost snapped off. Me? They didn't know it. So I guess the question is, how do you find out you're mentoring someone when you don't know it? And B, when you do find out, what do you do? Like, what action do you take? What do you think, Dennis?
Well, I would start off by saying, you're not running their life. And you are a resource on the side that they feel comfortable coming to, but you're not going to go into a situation unless they're going to do something that's going to be either career ending or is going to hurt themselves or whoever. You're not going to intervene and push them a certain way or stop them or push them to do something. So my experience has been that it's always been nothing formal, nothing written in stone. It was always a fluid kind of a relationship. And if somebody is looking to find a mentor, probably the most flattering sentence in the English language is, I need your advice. And if there's somebody there that you respect, that you think that you'd like to establish a mentoring relationship with, that's the way to do it. And most of the folks that I know in the fire service would first, say to themselves, "Is this kid lost his mental capacity or something? What's he thinking or what's she thinking?" But the reality of it is, that's the way you want to look at it. But it's not this driving drill instructor kind of a relationship. It's a fluid, back and forth kind of thing. And it could, in the beginning of a fire service career, if it's in the fire station, that's more of a training role of the senior person. And that senior person takes the firefighter and more or less shows them the ropes. But that relationship is not going to last. Once they get up to speed, there'll be somebody else. So again, there are different kinds of mentors. There are different lifespans of mentorship, depending upon where they go, how they succeed. I don't know, Tommy, what's your experience?
One of the things I noted of people that I have either mentored or people that I thought were mentoring me, there were some qualities in there that were pretty common to both ends of it. First one was you got to be approachable. You got to be able to be willing to share that knowledge and information. Also, show patience and empathy, and have a commitment to training and teaching. I think that's a pretty important. Consistency, making sure that the message that is going out the way it should be, and good communication skills. Obviously, you got to be able to share the knowledge, and that just boils down to be able to talk to people.
Well, Tommy, I want to add to that a little bit, and I've seen this a few times in my career, where people choose the wrong mentor. They choose the knuckle dragger, the knucklehead, whatever, the firefighter that's got the soot all over their face, and they walk to the edge of the rules and the regulations because they think it's funny, and that can ruin your career. You can pick the wrong mentor as well, and you want to pick, if you're in the process of choosing a mentor or seeking a mentor, you want to pick or choose somebody who is where you want to be in 5 years or 10 years. I mean, that's the way. I was always amused at the question, and I would get it all the time, is how did you wind up as chief of the department? Or how did you wind up as superintendent? I didn't wake up one morning and decide that this is what I was going to do.
Exactly.
You're preparing for the next role, whatever it is. You're a firefighter, the next role is lieutenant. And you just put one foot in front of the other. But the one thing is that you want to pick a mentor that's going to be able to help you understand what the road looks like. That it's not going to be a perfect vision, but it's going to be pretty close. And, because when an opportunity comes, when the situation is that you have an opportunity to get promoted, to move to another fire department, to move up the ranks, whatever it is, you've got to be ready. And that mentor is the one person that's going to be able to sit down with you and say, look, this is what the road looks like. This is how it looked for me. This is what I recommend you do. These are the areas that I think you should look at. And, not the knuckle drag or knucklehead that's going to be saying, oh, yeah, come on, I won't go any further. Let's just leave it there. Okay, we all worked with those folks. I loved them. I call them Mikeys. I loved Mikeys. I had companies filled with Mikeys, but they're not going to be career builders for you.
Right.
I have to thank you because at one point I was looking at a new job, and I had the honor of listening to your advice. And the best advice you gave me was sit down and think about the 5 questions that you pray to God they do not ask you in that interview, and then answer them. Solid stuff. And the few times I've had to pull that out and use it and share it with others that have been going for chief's jobs, solid advice.
That's a navigator. That's the navigator.
Let me follow up. I did the same thing, Tommy. I called Denis probably going back about 12, 15 years. And I was applying for a job, and I told him who was in charge of that committee. And he knew the guy in charge of the committee and what type of job it was. And he said, I'll give you his number. Just call him. He says, he's got a little bit of an ego, this guy. He says, if you call him by his retired title, he'll love you, and ask him for his advice. Like you said before, Denis, the most flattering question is, I need your advice. So I called this guy, and I said, we really don't know each other, but I was referred to you. I says, Denis Onieal gave me your phone number. I'm applying for X, Y, and Z position. I said, I'm seeking your advice. I had his undivided attention at that point. So that it worked. It worked. And he gave me his advice on what to do and how to do it. And I didn't get that job, but he called me after I didn't get it and said, here's why you didn't get it. He wanted to follow up and explain it to me because we kind of struck up that quick relationship. But the fact that I asked him for advice, that made him feel pretty good, and it opened up the door, and we had a nice conversation. So everything worked out anyway. So I'm kind of happy about that. But I also took your advice on some of your wisdom, and I down the road I certainly appreciate that. And as you know, when you were superintendent of the fire academy and I was the alumni administrator, we had many of those discussions, about the alumni, about the college, about the academy, and about I think Denis was a hard guy to get anything out of at that point. I was looking for advice on how to approach Washington, and he's going, I can't help you with that. I can't help you with that. But found a way to point me in the right direction where I can go get the answer. So it's much appreciated for the 20 years that I was doing that as the administrator. So, interesting stuff. But no doubt that I think this is something that fire departments really need to take stock in and look at, because I like you said, you're going to find you're going to be on a better path. I had a couple of officers in my last command before I went back to the city in Connecticut, that there was a retired captain who still lived in the area, and he popped in time to time. And the deputy who was there when I started, he said this guy was that guy. He pushed the regulations right to the edge. You call them on the radio at command to back out because it's going to hell. No, they can't see it; they're inside. They can't get him out of the building. One time the deputy actually went over and started pulling the line backwards to get him out of the building. And my radio wasn't working. Just a real kind of almost like a wise guy and all that stuff. And some of those guys thought he was the living end. Oh, there's Captain so-and-so, And these were officers that were there for 20 or 25, and they still thought this guy was the living end. And one time I told one of them, he's not the living end. I said, it's amazing he's still living altogether. And so are you. I said, that's you got your wig and hitched to the wrong horse, Nah, you should have been around when he was here. And I said, no, I got it. It's okay. I understand. But you're right. You know, you again, I'll use that same stupid phrase. You hitch your wagon to the wrong horse, it's going to take you down the wrong path, man. And then, you know, it's hard to come back from that sometimes. It's hard to come back.
Your metaphor is better than mine. I like it. Yes.
You like it? Okay.
Yeah. Only half the audience doesn't know what a horse or a wagon is.
That's true. That's true. Well, you know, and that's what happens when you put three old guys together on the damn screen, you know.
That happens.
So Dennis, what would be your advice? Your advice to for a young firefighter coming in? He's already in. He's out of rookie school. He's in the firehouse now. How does? Well, let me go back. Let me go back a little bit. The 8 senior guys that sat in the front row when I was doing leadership in North Plainfield, and when those 2 kids in the back said badge 1 and badge 2, what should those senior guys should have done at that point? What would you have if they came to you when you were the fire chief and say, hey, those kids pointed us out as their mentor? What advice would you give those senior guys in order to kind of take care of that business?
Becoming a mentor to people is a very, very satisfying experience. And as I related before that if I mentioned names today, you would recognize these men and women that are in top positions in the fire department all over the country. Mm-hmm. And there's no better reward than that because that's a legacy. I'm here for a short time. We're all, as one of the songs say, we're only dancing here for a short time. In the fire service, that short time is 25 years. And everyone watching this, you, the 3 of us sitting here, knows that it goes like that. I'm snapping my fingers. There we go. It's so quick out of your life. And all of a sudden it's over. And everybody in the fire service will tell you the same thing. But if you're a mentor, and I know the 2 of you are mentors as well, when you reflect back, your satisfaction is that you left the job a little bit better because you were in it, but you left the job even a lot better because you prepared men and women to come along and make your legacy better. And maybe they're going to tell a story about you. And I'm just going to tell a quick story because it was a reward that I had never expected. And I'm not going to mention names again, but this was right after 9/11. I was up there for 3 weeks working behind the scenes to help New York City reestablish their systems. And the president was coming to the memorial service in Emmitsburg, and I had to get back. President Bush, too, was going to be there. And I got a phone call from a guy you both know. And he said to me, Dennis, would you be interested in being the next New York City fire commissioner? And I said, no, not interested. He said, I'm not kidding. He didn't say that. He said, I'm not kidding around. And he added a couple of adjectives to that. And I said, neither am I. And he went into a whole long thing. But the point is this, that you never know when that investment in someone else is going to come back and be, a $1 million benefit to you. And you mentor people, they will never forget you for it. And you may mentor 1,000, well, you would never do 1,000. You could mentor 50 people, and nobody would ever come back and appreciate that. But it's a very satisfying experience when you leave the job to know that the men and women that you mentored are now leading in one small part, perhaps, because you took the time to invest in them. And I know that there are people that shouldn't be mentors. And so I wouldn't say, go to badge 1, 2, and 3. That's probably not the selection process that you want to use. What you want to do is to find people who are, as Tommy's words, empathetic, interested in other people, that communicate well, that listen, that know how to steer people without being obnoxious about it. Those kinds of skills.
I was working at Mohegan a couple of years after Merck, And I got a letter in the mail, and it was from a student of mine from Middlesex College when I was teaching there, when I was in Jersey. And I hadn't heard, and he had graduated years before. It's like 10 years I haven't heard this. I recognized the name on the envelope, and I opened it up, and it was a handwritten letter that he went through school as a young kid, went through college out of high school. He was 17, 18, 19 coming through the program. And he said, your discussion of fire protection, fire prevention, and that, he says, really motivated me to go into the field. And now I got hired recently as a career fire inspector for the town of XYZ. He said, I just wanted to send you a note to thank you. Now, as little as that is, I felt like $1 million because I called him because he put his name and number on. He put his number in his address. I called him and I said, number one, how did you find me? I said, I'm in the bowels of Eastern Connecticut. I says, and we're still horse and wagon going by here on the road, How the hell did you find me? But he explained how important it was that he sent me this note, that he went digging as far as he could. He went knocking on doors, calling people, and said, I need to find Ron Kanterman. And he wrote me that letter. And as little as that is, that meant the world to me. And I'm a pretty self-motivated guy, as you know. And it motivated me more to do something else for somebody else, So
Sure.
those are the little rewards are just tremendous.
I recently had a very similar experience. A firefighter came to me. His daughter was looking to get on a fire department, and I sat down with her and kind of laid a few things out for her. This was probably 2 years ago now. Well, she got on the fire department, and I was speaking at another conference. And she came to the conference in her uniform, and you looked me up to tell me how she was so proud, and what a satisfying feeling to be able to help people like that.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Tommy, you're leaning in. You got something, pal?
Yeah, just before you jump off and say, well, I'm going to be able to mentor Bob or whoever, is going to do it, there's some considerations that you need to really kind of take a look at and kind of do a self-study. Time constraints are going to be the first one. This stuff does not happen overnight. And if you're going to do it, you're going to have to make the time commitment to get it done. Generational differences. Something that I've always been concerned about, of having a 21-year-old firefighter and a 53-year-old battalion chief getting a fist fight about what they're watching on TV that night. But you need to recognize that the differences are out there and how you deal with bringing those on. And the third is maintaining boundaries. Make sure that you are the complete and quintessential professional while you're carrying out your mentor duties.
Good points, Tom. Great points.
Really good stuff. Well, we're starting to wind down the hour. With Tommy and I do a couple of things here. Dennis, we would like you to comment or participate. First thing we do is the book club. So I just finished the book. It was called Disaster. And it's a picture of a helicopter on the cover flying over New Orleans when the water was up after Katrina. And these two guys took an extreme deep dive into FEMA and the federal government and tell you exactly what happened. And it's everything from 10 days out from the storm, everything FEMA promised to do and didn't, Mike Brown getting caught in the middle, Dave Paulson coming in, the whole nine. Had a lot of nice things to say about Craig Fugate, by the way, and James Lee Witt. But interesting book. If you're in emergency management or you're going to get into emergency management, it's called Disaster. I don't have it. It's upstairs in the living room. I finished it today. I usually bring it down to my office. I could show the cover. It's called Disaster, and it's about Hurricane Katrina. If you're in that business, highly recommend it. Tom, you got any good books?
No, I did not grab one this evening. I apologize for not.
I'm going to the stacks. I'll be right back. I'm going to the stacks. Oh, yeah, this was kind of neat. This was a fun book to read. One of my former students, when I taught for John Jay College in the 90s, I met a young fireman named Nick Audiozzi. Nick went to captain in FDNY, and then he retired and became a big-time fire and life safety director for Morgan Stanley and some of these big Wall Street firms. And he retired again recently, but I see he still comes to the Fire and Life Safety Directors Association meetings, which I will mention Jack Murphy again. Jack was big in that organization for 30 years, and he chairs a conference every year in October. But Nick wrote a book called A Fireman's Life for Me, and it's about his time in the city and as a volunteer in Long Island. So if you're looking for one of those feel-good books, war stories, and here's how I got that scar over here. Great book by Nick Gordiosi, A Fireman's Life for Me. So those are my two for the month. Now, Dr. Onieal. Yes,
Dennis,
go ahead.
We talked a little bit about, being able to call and ask for favors. I think I'm still on academic probation at Jersey City State College. You got anything you can do for me?
Yeah, give me a call. I know a guy.
You know a guy. Tommy, what century did you go on? What millennium did you go on probation at Jersey City State?
It was 1977, I think.
Oh, Dennis, you can fix that. You can fix that.
Yeah, we'll get you a degree, no problem.
Oh, my God.
No, 50 years, I think, is a little bit. Some of those English courses might be a little stale,
I'm thinking most of the professors are dead. The professors are dead. Don't worry about it.
Things like biology and chemistry, you might want to be up to date on that.
It was at a time, I think Jim Klein was still teaching there. And there was a guy from Bayonne.
Jack Macklin.
Yep.
Good friend.
Yeah. How about that? So I got a question for you, Dennis. Did you ever do a podcast with Mike Cologne in New Haven? Mic'd up with it's called Mic'd Up in New Haven with Mike Cologne. He's a young kid, about 25 years old.
I don't believe so. I've done a few, but I don't recognize that name.
Okay, good. I'm saying good because I stole something from him. We're going to do it to you now. So that's perfect.
Oh, okay, okay.
Good. It's a double surprise.
Is this painful?
No, not too painful. We call this the lightning round, and we give Mike Cologne credit because when I was a guest on his podcast, he did it to me. So we get to do it to you. So we gave you the question, immediate answer, no hesitation. What's your favorite color?
Black.
Black?
I'm looking at Tommy's shirt. What the hell do I know?
What's your favorite color fire truck?
It's got to be red, right?
Got to be red. Okay. What's your favorite late night snack? Late night.
Cheese sandwich.
A cheese sandwich. Okay. What's your favorite firehouse meal?
Chili Mac.
All right. Favorite chain restaurant?
Applebee's.
Okay. We're not convinced, but okay. What's your favorite type of place or style of food to eat out? Like if you were going out to eat, what do you like?
Gotta be Italian.
Italian, got to be Italian. Okay. What's your favorite sports team?
Giants. New York Giants.
Okay. Wow.
They play in New Jersey, by the way.
Yeah, we know. What's your comfort food dish when you need comfort?
I'm going back to Chili Mac. As a matter of fact, that's what I have for dinner tonight. Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite animal other than the guy on the screen with the beard?
I am not an animal lover. I'm going to get into trouble here. As a matter of fact, one of my rules in life is to never say or do anything against animals. You ruin your
okay. Okay, I got you.
My favorite animal is a camel. Okay, I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. I've been called a hump before, but never a camel. So I got.
You lay awake at night thinking of these questions. I'm a city kid.
I got
concrete.
I got a couple from Mike, but the rest, some of them I did myself. Engine or truck?
I'm sorry?
Engine or truck?
Oh, truck. I spent 15 years in a ladder company. I never got a pint of water out of a pumper in my life. That's a true story.
Okay, I got you. Okay, so here's the big one. Knowing what you know now, if you can go back in time and give advice to a 20-year-old version of yourself, what advice would you give to yourself when you were 20?
Steady progress. You're not going to hit a Grand Slam home run, bottom of the ninth high score. It's about hitting singles every day and making sure that you're staying on track. There's plenty of opportunity to go off track. Be prepared when opportunity comes. If you're studying for promotion, don't wait 2 weeks before the test. Just steady as it goes. And when an opportunity comes, the biggest challenge you're going to face is the fear of making a big move. And you're going to be uncomfortable. And you're going to be uncomfortable in that first 6 months in that new job, whatever it is. But the saddest thing that I'd ever seen in the fire service is that captain in rescue who knows the job inside out and backwards, who is a great leader, who doesn't want to take the battalion chief's test because they don't want to leave rescue. Okay.
Oh, I know.
And he or she who retires at the highest pay wins. That's the game. Yeah.
That's great. That's great advice, not only to a young Denis Onieal, but to everybody. That's great advice to anybody who's listening today. Well, this was a great session. I hope our viewing audience got something out of this in terms of becoming a mentor, getting a mentor. If you're young in the business, find somebody to hitch your wagon to. I'll say it again. And if you're old in the business and you're still in, take a look at that next kid coming through the door and say, you know what? Maybe I'll put my arm around him and say, all right, son, I got some advice for you, But like you said, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon, and you got to know when to say when and when to not be there and when to be and all that stuff. So good conversation. This was great stuff. Denis, we appreciate you being on with Tommy and I. It's always a pleasure. Yeah, always a pleasure to sit and chat with you. And I'm sure we could do another 4 hours, but as it is, they don't even like looking at me for an hour.
I'd like to challenge one of Dennis's answers about food, because Kenny Farmer told me the story of I guess you guys had to stop for broccoli rabe up in Jersey City one day.
Oh yeah, yeah. But those are special treats. I don't get. It's got to be in season. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Jersey City still boasts some good Italian restaurants. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. All right, with that, we'd like to always close out the show. We tell everybody till we're up on a backstep again. Be safe, slow down, wear your mask, wear your seatbelt, buckle up, eat right, eat light, get some exercise, use your head, watch how you drive, arrive alive, and hug your family and hug your wife and kids before you say goodnight. So do that, and we'll say goodnight now. And good night, everybody. Be safe. Take care.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you for the opportunity.